What up? It's your boy Dick Incredible Man, and yes, I am back at it again. And this is my discussion slash review for 911 Season 3, Episode 15, man. And this episode was a Diaz episode, man. We saw a lot of how Eddie was and how he became the Eddie that we see and know and love today. And it was very Eddie centric. So let's get into it, man. Okay, man. This episode was legit. I really loved it, and we finally seen like the trailer that was promoted for the second half of the season is the little boy that was in the well, and we finally got to that episode. And I thought this episode was going to be that situation plus some more, but this situation actually took up the whole episode, and it revolved around that particular situation and kind of a lot of more, you can't really say character development, but maybe like just like a introduction, I guess, fully to the character of Eddie, because we see how he was prior, because we start off this episode with seeing Eddie with his wife and having the birth of Christopher, and we see his whole transition from him in the military and his wife and their problems, and finding out Christopher has cerebral palsy. And we see him throughout the whole episode. It flashes back and forward between his past and his present, and we see him becoming the character that we know and love today, which is Diaz on the Fire Force, not the Fire Force, on the, in the Company 118. Now, what I loved about this episode was, I guess you can kind of say it kind of paralleled, because Eddie's determination to save this kid is also his determination for Christopher as well, if you kind of catch my drift. This episode, like I said, it started with us watching and seeing Eddie coming and the birth of Christopher. That's what this whole episode started, and then we jump into that whole little development. Then we see, and we jump back into present day, and we see everybody's kind of just hanging around the firehouse, and they're testing out these new radios. And Christopher comes with Clara, and they come to check out, well, not check out, talk to Eddie about Christopher's is it show and tell, and he wanted to showcase Eddie's silver star. So when that came up, I knew that we were kind of going to get a brief instance into what happened as to Eddie obtaining the silver star, and that's what we got. And we noticed that in that process, Eddie wasn't really feeling too keen about the whole situation. And that's very given, because a lot of military people have that instant, like they don't want to talk about anything that happened over there like that, because it brings up and dredges up so much memory and everything. They don't want to talk about it. But because it's for Christopher and because it's for his son, Eddie's willing to do whatever. We see he had some reserves about it in the beginning, but at the end of the episode, we see he does it anyway. So they get the call, they go out, and it's the one that's been broadcast forever about the kid in the well. They're searching, and they finally find him, and they have to get him out, because eventually he's gonna, either slip further down in the hole, or he could just die, because he can't breathe. So they decide to do it. They get everybody together, and they dig a hole opposite of the well, and then they're gonna have somebody go down and then kind of just cut the well and then get the kid out. Now, all of that took place, and that's fine and dandy, and I loved it because I love the action that 911 showcases. But I really wanted to focus on the flashbacks that we saw with Eddie. We get it. I don't know how I want to describe it, because we see that his wife, we knew that she left Christopher in Eddie, and that didn't take place until maybe midway, halfway through to the episode. But we see what led up to that point. Eddie kept re-enlisting in the military, because I'm assuming he felt some type of way about finding out that Christopher has cerebral palsy, and he didn't act on it, he didn't say anything, but that was the vibe I was kind of getting, because every time he kept re-enlisting. And granted, it was sure that they needed the money, and Christopher Christopher's medical bills kept piling up, and that was a lot of money along with their average bills that they had to pay. And she wasn't working because they needed full hands-on support with Christopher at the time. And I felt like in that situation, Eddie kind of used it as an escape, not to not deal with it, but it was just like he didn't want to deal with it because maybe he felt like him going to work would just kind of give him an excuse. And I'm not saying that he didn't love his son, because we clearly see that throughout this season 2 and this season that he loves Christopher. But at that moment, that might have just a lot to handle on a younger marriage couple. Then we see his wife constantly having to take care of Christopher, and I understand that that was a lot on her. And we see what kind of drove a wedge in between them and everything that took place with that, even from their parents and their parents being kind of overbearing and everything. So a lot of factors played into the fact of her leaving and Eddie being the type of person that he was. But at the same time, the only thing I have about this whole comment, Eddie could have stayed, but granted, we know that the bills were piling up. And his wife, she was just overtaken, having to constantly watch Christopher and do everything. And I'm sure that was a lot on her. But the only thing I say about that in her situation is I get it, but at the same time, that's your son. Even if the world turns him away or Eddie turns him away, that's your son. You birthed him. So regardless, I can't say for a personal reason. I don't have any kids, and I don't know how taking care of someone with cerebral palsy, what it entails. But what I'm saying is that's your kid. Regardless of any situation, that is your kid. So regardless, you should have been there. But maybe it was just too much for her and she couldn't handle the pressure. I don't know. Maybe because of Eddie constantly leaving and him kind of bashing her a little bit every time she talked about certain situations about them moving or anything like that. And it just really wasn't working for her, and she decided to take a break. And the thing is, this is real life. You can't take a break from real life. I mean, I'm sorry, and it is what it is. You can't take a break from real life. And she just wanted to escape that because she had been constantly taking care of Christopher and doing everything. Now it's Eddie's turn. And Eddie's back from the military, so now it's his turn to take up the mantle. Now, let's talk about the incident with the Silver Star. I love the fact that he didn't really just go out and just like bombard and murder people, but it was a traumatic experience because the helicopter went down. They were constantly getting shot at. He took a couple bullets. Someone died in front of him from the impact of the helicopter crash. So a lot of stuff went down, but we see why he got the Silver Star, because he saved all those people and they held out till support came. But I understand why he doesn't want to talk about it. It was a traumatic time, and he was thinking about his wife and Christopher, and at the point to where he thought he could almost die. So it was a very serious and intense situation, and I understand why he doesn't want to talk about it. And then we jump back into the present, and we see him getting the kid out and almost rescuing them, and then Bobby pulls him up, and Eddie cuts the cord and falls back into the hole and rescues the kid. But now they don't have a way of getting out. But then Chimney comes down to rescue the kid, and at that moment, lightning strikes the I want to say what was the cable cord or ladder? No. Anyway, I think it was the thing that was digging, and it collapses all of that, and Eddie's trapped underground. So then we kind of go back in the past, and we see that we now know that why she left and the reason she left, and Eddie's left there with Christopher. And then his parents come and say, well, we're going to take Christopher. And Eddie was like, no, that's my son. And I was like, Eddie, well, you haven't been here, and he knows us better. It's better to keep him in a routine. And Eddie was like flipping the script, and I understand why, because that's his kid. And yeah, he wasn't there for the whole time, but now he feels like it's not trying to make up for anything, but it feels like, okay, I understand she needed a break. I pushed all of this on her because I wasn't ready to deal with it. So now I'll deal with it because he's my son. So I'm going to take that chance. And then we learned that, he had a bunch of offers for other firehouses as well, which was also in Chicago, but he decided to take LA and the 118. And with him being trapped down there and almost drowning and everything, and he passed out, and we see him having like a real family connection and flashbacks of him connecting with the 118 and Christopher, and then he wakes himself up, and he finds one of the escape tunnels, and he comes out in probably like a little pond on the outskirts of the house, and that's how the episode ends, with him getting rescued. Well, he rescued himself, and then he goes to Christopher's show and tell, and he kind of goes into detail about how he got the silver star. And some of the aspects I loved is the flashbacks, learning about Eddie's past, and seeing how that transformed him into the Eddie that we know now, and also the flashbacks of seeing how he and Christopher connected with the 118, and that's his family now, because we all know that he lost his wife and Christopher lost his mom, but the 118 is there for Eddie and Christopher and everybody else that needs to be in love by the 118. And I love that, man. I really did, and that's why I love 911. This is your boy Dick Incredible, man. Don't forget to smash that like button so you can't smash any more. Comment down below, and I'll be sure to respond to each and every one of them, and subscribe, but only if you really want to, man. Peace out.